We'll start it off. Pierre Poilievre is the leader of Canada's Common Sense Conservatives. He grew up in Alberta, where he was adopted by two school teachers who raised him and his brother. His wife, Anna, is a refugee from Venezuela. Canada made and kept her family a promise that anyone from anywhere could achieve anything, that hard work pays off with powerful paychecks that allow you to afford food, gas, and homes in safe neighborhoods. But 9 years later, that promise is broken by Trudeau. Pierre's mission is to restore Canada's promise. His common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Pierre wants to bring back the country, the Canada that we all know and love. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the leader of the Common Sense Conservative Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre.
Thank you very much to our Common Sense Conservative candidate, Jesse Sahota, police officer, a local boy, grew up from humble beginnings. His mother washed dishes to pay his way through schooling, and to feed him big, powerful, protein-filled meals so that he could develop into a wrestling champion. Check out those cauliflower ears. Very impressive, eh? That's from winning a lot of wrestling matches, all right? So if you ever see a guy with ears like that, it means don't mess with him. He's gone on to be not only a police officer, but has volunteered his time for what now, 12 years as a volunteer wrestling coach in the, which high school?
North Delta Secondary and Tomanos.
Okay, great. So a local boy, a local champion. We're also joined by our whip and Common Sense Conservative MP for the Surrey area. That's Carrie Lynn Finlay.
Sid's MP.
Sid's MP. She works for Sid.
I do.
That's your boss. That's her boss as well.
Exactly.
And then we have the great Common Sense Conservative MP, Mark Dalton, who are all working on my common sense plan to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. But let's figure out how we got here before we talk about where we're going from here. You know, this was always a country where anyone from anywhere could do anything. You know, Sid, for example, started this business from nothing back in 1982. 81. So it's been more than 40 years. And he was started off with how many trucks?
I think our original fleet was about 30.
30. And then you built it up into this.
Yeah, we're close to 8,000.
8,000. Incredible. What a story. What a great story. And he took a risk. Probably had a lot of sleepless nights in those early days. I suspect his house has been mortgaged more than once. And there have been many occasions when he went to bed at night not knowing how he was going to get the paychecks to his employees the next week because he didn't know what was going to come in from the customers. That's the kind of heart-stopping stress that it takes to build a business like this and supply you all with paychecks. All of you have had to struggle to learn how to do this very complicated trade, to be a fabricator, a welder, a mechanic. That takes major brain power. And you probably thought, one, how am I going to get through this apprenticeship? And two, how am I going to pay my bills? But you got here. It used to be that in this country, anyone who worked hard could rely on having affordable food, gas, and homes. But after 8 years of Trudeau and the NDP, that is no longer the case. After that, roughly a decade of wacko policies, of hiking your taxes, of doubling the debt, he's doubled housing costs, unleashed crime and chaos in our communities, caused drug overdoses with decriminalization and tax-subsidized opioids, driven up the cost of food with carbon taxes that apply on the trucks that you repair, therefore on everything delivered in those trucks. Life has never been worse than it is today. And Sid was telling me that in his 40-plus years, he's never seen the economy so bad. And it's getting worse every single day. But Trudeau is clearly not worth the cost, the crime, and the corruption. And the NDP is the one keeping him in power right now. The good news is life was not like this before Trudeau and the NDP, and it won't be like this after they're gone. We're going to bring home the country that we knew and still love. Our common sense plan will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. We will axe the carbon tax to lower the cost of the gas and, more importantly, the diesel that goes in these trucks. Everything that goes by truck or train, therefore, will be lower cost to deliver. We will cap government spending and cut government waste to fix the budget so we can bring down inflation, interest rates, and income tax. That'll mean you'll bring home more and your dollar will keep its value. We will build the homes. Here in the Lower Mainland, housing is probably more expensive than anywhere else in the world. Vancouver is the third most expensive housing market on earth when you would compare incomes to housing costs. Canada's housing affordability has worsened more in Canada than in any other G7 country over the last 8 years, and the second worst out of the entire 40-country OECD. This is not a global problem. This is a made in Canada problem, and it is the result of the fact that we have the fewest homes per capita of any country in the G7. Even though we have the most land to build on, we spend the most of our economy on housing construction, and we have by far the most mortgage debt as a share of GDP. So let's get this straight. We have the most land for home building, we borrow the most for home building, we spend the most of our economy on home building, all to have the fewest homes. Why? The answer is we have the worst bureaucracy. The bureaucracy adds costs through delays, taxes, charges, fees, consultants, lawyers. In fact, in Vancouver, the cost of dealing with the bureaucracy to get a permit works out to $1.3 million for every newly built home. The number one cost in building a home in Vancouver is not land, labor, or materials. It is getting a permit. That is insane. It is unacceptable. And I will not put up with it any longer. When I'm Prime Minister, I will require municipalities permit more homes, free up more land, and lower charges and fees and taxes to do it. They will be required to permit 15% more home building per year and have high-rise apartments around every future federally funded transit station as a condition of getting their federal money. I will sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build, build, build. We'll back the trades. We'll back the trades with more and better Red Seal materials that our teenagers can start with when they're in their grade school programs, like you're welcoming many of those kids. He says, or Sid was saying, that some of the schools have good material, some have bad. The National Red Seal Council should provide top-notch material for every licensed trade so that our teenagers can get started earlier. We should give tax fairness. The Tax Fairness for Traveling Trades Workers Act that I will pass will allow you to write off the full cost of your food, transportation, and accommodation to get from one project to another. And we'll make sure that polytechnics, colleges, and trade schools get the same federal support as universities. And the tradespeople will build the homes. We need boots and not suits in our economy. Boots and not suits. Speaking of boots, we're going to create big pipelines, mines, LNG liquefaction, and other resource projects that will bring home the money, the jobs, and the businesses to our country away from the dirty dictators. And we want to bring homes in safe neighborhoods. After 8 years of Trudeau, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder are the result of the catch and release criminal justice that allows the same repeat offenders out again and again and again. In fact, the same 40 offenders in Vancouver had to be arrested 6,000 times. Think about that. 40 offenders, 6,000 arrests. What do you think, Daryl?
Not very good.
Not very good. Daryl agrees it's not very good. Seems like it's a pretty simple solution though, isn't it? What if we just kept those 40 offenders in jail? Then you would have 6,000 fewer people hit over the head with a baseball bat, or stabbed, or robbed, or pulled over at gunpoint to take their car away, right? So keep the dangerous repeat offender behind bars. My common sense plan is to make repeat offenders ineligible for bail, house arrest, or parole. It will be jail, not bail, jail, not bail. We will stop the drug crisis. Trudeau and the NDP decriminalized crack smoking in children's parks. They had nurses who had to stop breastfeeding their kids because people were smoking crack in the hospital. And the nurses breathed it in and said, I can't breastfeed my child now because my breast milk is contaminated. And the NDP and Liberals said, you can't stop them from smoking crack or even bringing a machete into the hospital. Like, it's almost like we're hallucinating here. It's so nuts. So my common sense plan will ban hard drugs, stop giving out tax-funded opioids, and put the money in treatment and recovery services to bring our loved ones home drug-free. Finally, we're going to reinforce our ports and borders. We're going to bring in scanners, so every shipping container that goes in and comes out is scanned. We can find out what's inside to stop the drugs and guns from coming in and the stolen cars from going out. And we'll pay for it by canceling the gun grab. Trudeau wants to spend $2 to $7 billion buying firearms from law-abiding, licensed, trained, and tested sport shooters and hunters, people who are least likely to commit a crime. They've already been vetted by the police. They're the ones who follow the law. They have a PAL or an RPAL. Why are we wasting our money going after Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle? We should be going after the criminals. So I will let you keep your licensed law-abiding firearm, let you enjoy your sport shooting and hunting, and go after the real criminals. You see, because I want to protect Canadians from criminals while Justin Trudeau wants to protect turkeys from hunters. So you choose what you think makes more sense. We want more sense in everything. We want to bring you back in charge of your life. We're going to ban our ministers and MPs from any involvement in the World Economic Forum. We'll stop them from creating a central bank digital currency to control your bank account. We will cut back on foreign aid to dictators, terrorists, and multinational bureaucracies and bring that money home to put it into our military so that our troops can keep our land strong and free. This is common sense, my friends. Common sense is what built this business and this country, Sid. It's the common sense of the common people united for our common home. Your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home. Thank you.
And we're going to open up the floor. Does anybody here have questions? We're going to take some questions here.
When you said free up federal land, you're not talking our parks.
No.
What are you talking?
Well, we have 37,000 federal buildings already with enormous vacancy rates. The federal government's, I estimate that the vacancy rates on our existing federal buildings are probably higher than any other employer in the country, any other sector in the country.
Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Well, yeah, and we have these enormous buildings that are largely empty. And we have, the federal government has, I think it's uses twice as much space per employee as the private sector. And largely that's due to enormous vacancies and mismanagement. So we should be selling off these buildings. I estimate we can sell off 15%, which is 6,000 federal buildings. And we have, I think that means the time is up. There we go. That's his censorship blocking. C11. So, and there's also non-ecologically sensitive lands right across the country that are owned by the federal government. There's an enormous abandoned federal landing strip just east of the Parliament buildings on the Aviation Parkway, for example, in Ottawa. Enormous, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres of completely unused land. You can drive around the nation's capital, there's land everywhere that we don't use and that is no particular ecological value. So we need to sell that stuff off and turn it into homes.
With one last comment over here.
What about the retirees? They can't afford to live. How will you put that?
We have to stop inflation. That's the problem. Inflation destroys the savings of seniors, just like it destroys the paychecks of workers. The answer is that the government is creating too much cash by overspending. So whenever the government tells you that a program is free, what they mean is that they're borrowing and printing to pay for it. And what happens when you have more money chasing fewer goods? It bids up the prices. So if you have an economy with, to simplify, with 10 apples and $10, it's a buck an apple. If you double the amount of cash to 20, but you still have only 10 apples, it's now $2 for each apple. You're not twice as rich just because you have twice as much cash. Our money supply, because of Trudeau's massive spending and borrowing, has grown from 1.8 trillion to 2.4 trillion. A 32% increase in the amount of cash in bills, coins, and bank deposits, even though the economy has only grown by 4%. So the economy grows by 4%, and the money supply grows by 32%. The money is growing 8 times faster than the stuff it buys, which bids up the cost and gives you inflation. We need to stop that inflation by capping government spending and cutting government waste with a new dollar for dollar law that requires we find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, so that we can bring down the deficit, the inflation, the interest rates, and the income tax burden on all our people, but especially our seniors. Thank you. All right, thanks everybody.